In this video, I dyno test my 2019 6.7 PowerStroke with no computer tuning, the stock CP4 fuel injection pump, and all the stock emissions installed. Let's get into it, and at the end, I'll walk through how much power we made.
So these are the last three tests I did. Horsepower total. But yeah, that governor hits it.
Yeah, the 880s.
95 mile an hour. So you're done.
So what does it do? Does it cut power?
Yeah, it just cuts the fuel. It's like it just goes blank. Yeah. I mean, it doesn't shut off, but you lose total power.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So yeah, we dynoed the truck. These are the run files for the first 7 runs. We did do a couple others, but that's for another video and another day. You'll see we have horsepower over here on the left and torque over here on the right. For those familiar with my channel, my truck is completely stock in that I don't have any sort of tuner. I have my DPF and my EGR, my SCR, and the stock CP4 fuel pump. What I have done is replaced basically all the engine plumbing with respect to airflow in the turbo. So I have a pusher intake manifold, I have a pusher hot side pipe, and a S&B cold side intercooler pipe. And these runs were done with the AFE cold air intake. And I don't really think they do anything, but for what it's worth, I also have a DPF back exhaust. So the drop off you're seeing here was the governor hitting at 95 miles an hour. So that was what Bear, the owner of the shop and the operator of these runs, was talking about earlier in the video. And yeah, so basically the governor hits at 95 miles an hour and it cuts fuel. He was doing pulls with traction control off in 5th gear, kind of manually shifting up. Now, I did this for a couple of reasons. One, I was just curious to see, what a truck with a 200,000 or almost 200,000 mile old DPF could put down for power numbers. And I really wish I had done this like when the truck had the stock airbox and stock intake and all of that stuff. Yeah, I mean, let's get like right to the numbers here, shall we? So like one of my best runs, let's see, it was like 428 for horsepower, and you can see it had kind of started to level off at this point. That was at what, that's like, yeah, 2700 rpm or 2700 rpm. Yeah, I just really wish I had done a baseline. Regardless, as all these armchair mechanics were saying here on the internet, like 200K DPF, it has a bunch of ash and it's junk, you should probably throw it out. And if that were indeed the case, I don't think I would be putting down 428 horsepower. Now, just for reference, like Ford says the 2019s, the 17 through 19s make 450 at the crank. So that means I'm only losing 22 horsepower between the crank and my tires. I have a 331 axle, and I'm running, they're like a skinny 34-inch all-terrain, the 295 70 R18s. And I really couldn't find anyone else who had done a baseline wheel horsepower, because I think most people do mods to their trucks like I did and then get all excited that like they're going to make big power and then they put it on a dyno. Dyno Pro did use a dyno jet, which is different than a Mustang dyno because a dyno jet is much more accurate. It is a big drum that is the same distance around, and it weighs, what is it, 1,600 pounds basically. And so it's turning these drums a certain distance at a certain weight, and that's how you get your power output. Whereas Mustang dynos, which I've seen, seems like quite a few diesel truck people use, are fine, but they're not a fixed benchmark. Like you can change them and change the resistance to like simulate towing, and they're just not super accurate. NASCAR and all the big racing organizations and teams use a dyno jet. They bring a dyno jet with them to the track. They're not bringing a Mustang dyno. Anyway, I'm not here to sell dyno jets. It's just the way that Bear explained it to my brother and I was they're much more reliable and accurate. So I'm going to move this to the side because it's blocking my view of the screen. So yeah, so really I pulled 428 in this section in a stock emissions truck that has 200,000 miles on it. And all I did was change some of the piping. So what that tells me is the truck and the DPF are fine. The other thing that's kind of funny is there was someone I found who dynoed their truck who did some big mods and like didn't have certain parts in place, and they made 450 wheel. So like, and they're doing that with a tuner and getting rid of some problem parts. So like, if I did that, it would be kind of sick, because I mean, if I can make 428 with a DPF on a no tuner, then I mean, yeah, we could definitely go fast. It's very tempting. So I can change the bottom to vehicle speed, and again, you're seeing at 95, like it's cutting power. Well, that's going to do it here. Thank you for watching. I hope you found this somewhat interesting. It's tough because, again, I don't have a base to compare it to, but now you know what a DPF with that has 200,000 miles of use out of it makes for power. And honestly, I have really no complaints. If a truck that has that old of a DPF is making 428 wheel horsepower and what did we do for torque and 882 foot-pounds of torque, it's totally fine. I mean, I would expect to see a huge power decrease if you had a DPF that was packed with ash and that needed to be replaced. So it honestly reinforces my conclusion, my biodiesel video, that these trucks, the 17 through 19s, have some weird bug where they just hate that Midwestern shit fuel. Stay tuned for the Banks test. So this was the AFE power cold air intake running with my hood closed on the dyno. We had forced air, and we're going to see when I put the Banks on, run it for a bit so the PCM updates, gets used to the new inputs, and then we'll put that on the dyno and we'll see how big of a difference Banks ram air makes. See you next time here on PowerStroke Maintenance. Cheers.